The moment I saw her waddling across my gravel driveway like she owned the entire mountain, I knew something was off. Her name was Wanda Hensley, president of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association, and she had that permanent squint, like everything and everyone was an inconvenience. I'd just finished trimming the hedges around my family's old log cabin, the one I'd inherited from my grandfather last spring. It sat on the outer edge of Pine Valley, tucked just far enough into the trees to feel like the real outdoors. I'd been coming up every other weekend to restore it, and I'd just replaced the locks for better security. I left a spare set of keys with Wanda, per HOA protocol in case of emergencies, or so I thought. "Wanda," I called, walking over, rake still in hand. "Hey, I need the spare keys back. I've got a contractor coming next weekend, and I don't want anyone else walking in while he's working." She stopped short, arms folded against her lime green cardigan. "Actually, Gregory, no," I blinked. "No. Until your landscaping plans are approved by the board, I don't feel comfortable returning the keys. That cabin's historic. You can't just go around making changes." "I'm not changing anything historic. I'm clearing dead trees and replacing a broken gutter. You painted the shutters last month without submitting a color change request. They're the same color they've been since 1972. She hummed, looking off like she was sniffing for lies. "Still. The board needs time to review." There was no board, just Wanda and her two friends who drank boxed wine and gossiped in a gazebo they called the board office. I knew this because I'd sat in on one of their meetings last month. They'd spent 40 minutes debating whether a neighbor's wind chimes were offensive. I exhaled, trying to stay calm. "You don't have the right to withhold those keys. That's my property." Her grin was tight and smug, "and this is an HOA-protected neighborhood." "You signed the agreement when you took over the deed." I hadn't. My grandfather had, and that agreement was a mess of outdated rules and power-tripping nonsense. I'd already started looking into it. "Fine," I said. "You've got until Monday." "To do what exactly?" she asked, raising one penciled brow. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked back to the cabin, but not before hearing her mutter, "Some people just don't belong up here." I drove back to town that night, more irritated than I'd ever been leaving that place. She had no legal ground to keep my keys, but she was doing it anyway, just because she could. I'd dealt with difficult people before, but this was something else. I called up an old friend from college, now a property attorney, and asked a few pointed questions. Then I spent the rest of the weekend digging into the HOA charter, the deed to the cabin, and the local property codes. By Monday morning, I had everything I needed, and Wanda Hensley was about to find out that you don't mess with Gregory Barnes just because you have a laminated name tag and a clipboard. Monday morning, I showed up to the Pine Valley community office with a folder so thick it barely fit in my glove box. I had on a button-up shirt and slacks, nothing flashy, just professional enough to make a point. Wanda's car was parked crooked in her usual spot, wheels halfway over the curb like the rules didn't apply to her. She was inside, straightening a stack of flyers on the corkboard that read, "Community standards are community strength." I waited until she looked up. "You again," she said, not even pretending to be pleasant. "I brought something for you," I said, opening the folder and sliding a copy of the emergency key policy across the counter. She didn't touch it. "I don't need to read it." "I know what it says." "Then you know it doesn't give you authority to withhold keys from a deeded property owner when there's no active violation under review." She tilted her head. "The shutter color issue is still pending." "No, it's not. I contacted the county historical committee." "The cabin is not officially registered as historic, and the HOA guidelines you're citing were never ratified after the 2009 charter revision. I have the minutes from that meeting." Her fingers twitched, but she kept her arms crossed. "This isn't how we do things up here, Gregory. We work through channels." "You mean your porch wine club? That's not a legal board. According to the bylaws, any HOA decisions must be voted on by a quorum of at least 5 elected members." You only have 3 and none of you were elected within the last 2 years. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I'm also filing a motion for injunctive relief, I continued. You've unlawfully denied access to private property. Here's the pre-filing notice. You've got 48 hours to return the keys or you'll be served. You're threatening me with court. I'm warning you, there's a difference. For a moment, I thought she might throw something. Instead, she snatched the folder off the counter and spun around, muttering as she walked off down the hall. I didn't wait for her to come back. I'd done what I came to do. On my way out, I passed a woman I recognized, Janelle, who lived 2 cabins up from mine. She gave me a curious look. Wanda giving you trouble? Let's just say she won't be holding on to other people's keys much longer. She nodded slowly. Good, she's been letting herself into people's homes when they're gone, says she's inspecting for compliance. I stopped walking. Seriously? She came into mine last winter while I was in Florida, left a note on the kitchen counter about my hazardous curtain length. That changed everything. I drove straight to the sheriff's office in town. The deputy on duty, a tall guy with a weathered face and a badge that looked like it had been polished 5 minutes ago, listened carefully as I laid it all out. Wanda withholding keys, accessing private property without consent, and impersonating an enforcement official. Do you have proof she entered your neighbor's home? He asked, not directly. But if she's done it once, she's probably done it again. He nodded and took down the details. We've had complaints before, but no one wanted to press charges. If you're serious, we'll open an investigation. I'm very serious. By that afternoon, I'd filed the injunction paperwork with the county clerk. The judge scheduled a hearing for Friday morning. I notified Wanda via certified mail and email the way the court required. And just to cover all bases, I installed new trail cameras around the perimeter of the cabin, hidden, motion triggered, and recording straight to the cloud. On Wednesday, I got a call from Janelle. She's been pacing up and down your driveway all morning, she whispered. Kept looking over her shoulder like she's waiting for someone. Thanks, let me know if she tries anything. I'd already set up alerts on my phone for the cameras. At 2:14 p.m., I got a ping. Wanda, wearing gloves and a windbreaker that looked 3 sizes too big, was at the back door of the cabin. She pulled out a key. I watched in real time as she unlocked the door and disappeared inside. I called the sheriff immediately. 5 minutes later, I sent them the footage. When the deputy arrived, Wanda was still inside. She came out looking flustered, holding a clipboard and muttering about pest inspections. The deputy didn't buy it. She was placed under investigative detainment on the spot for unlawful entry. I didn't ask for her to be cuffed, but they did it anyway. Protocol, they said. The look on her face as she was guided into the back of that cruiser was burned into my brain. Not angry, not scared, just stunned. Friday came and the courtroom was packed. Word had spread fast. Several residents had come to watch, and a few whispered their own stories of Wanda's antics, unauthorized landscaping fines, threats of lien filings that never materialized, and one guy who said she tried to evict him over a garden gnome. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair and a stare that could split concrete, took everything in with little expression. "Mr. Barnes," she said, "you've submitted recorded video, legal documentation, and witness statements. What specifically are you asking the court to do?" "I want a mandated return of my property keys. I want a restraining order preventing her from accessing my home without written consent. And I want the HOA placed under temporary administrative review due to procedural violations." The judge turned to Wanda, who sat next to a visibly uncomfortable lawyer in a suit 2 decades out of style. "Mrs. Hensley, do you dispute the facts as presented?" Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I was just trying to maintain standards." "That's not what the law says," the judge replied. "This is not a monarchy. Injunction granted. Temporary restraining order approved. Administrative audit of the Pine Valley HOA is ordered, effective immediately." The courtroom buzzed. I turned to leave and caught Janelle's eye. She gave me a quick nod, subtle but full of satisfaction. Outside, people were already talking. A few residents gathered by the parking lot, shaking their heads and trading stories. One man said, "Took long enough. I lost $1,000 in fines she made up." Another added, "She told me my mailbox violated elevation code. I didn't even know that was a thing." I didn't say much. I just walked to my truck, started the engine, and drove back up to the cabin. When I got there, everything was just how I'd left it. Except now, there were new locks on the doors. Ones only I had the keys to. The cameras had done their job. The law had done its part, and Wanda Hensley. She'd finally learned that just because you control a clipboard doesn't mean you control the people who live here. The Monday after the hearing, I found a plain manila envelope wedged under the windshield wiper of my truck. No stamp, no return address, just my name scribbled in shaky handwriting. Inside were 3 sheets of paper, the minutes from a special HOA board meeting, a printout of a supposed noise violation issued against me, and a photo of my cabin taken from behind a tree line. I stood there for a long minute, staring at the grainy image. The porch light was on. That meant whoever took it had been there at night. This wasn't just about keys anymore. I made a call to Deputy Langston, the same one who had arrested Wanda the week before, and asked if he had time to meet. He agreed to swing by the property that afternoon. "You're telling me someone left this without postage?" he asked, flipping through the pages on the hood of his cruiser. "Found it an hour ago, no witnesses, but the photo, that wasn't taken from the road, that's on my land." Langston looked back at the tree line, then at me. "Let's check something." We walked the perimeter of the cabin's eastern side, where the dense pine growth started. About 30 yards in, we found the stump of an old survey marker snapped clean off. A dozen yards past that, a fresh boot print in the damp soil. Langston took a photo, then crouched beside it. "Heavy tread," he said. "Too deep for a casual hiker. Whoever it was, they weren't just strolling through." I didn't need to guess who'd sent the envelope. Wanda had been barred from stepping foot on my property, but she still had friends. A few of them had stood up for her at the hearing, whispering about outsiders and tradition. She wasn't done, just operating through proxies now. Langston stood and adjusted his belt. "You want to file another complaint?" "I want to file for harassment," I said, "and trespassing." "If she's using others to get around a restraining order, that's a violation," he nodded. "We'll document it, but we'll need more than a boot print and a photo to prove she ordered someone out here. I'll get you more." That night, I reviewed the trail cam footage again. I'd installed 2 more units after the hearing, one facing the tree line and another mounted in the rafters under the porch awning. Around 2:47 a.m. the previous Friday, a figure in a hoodie moved through the brush and paused behind a tree. They crouched. A camera flash blinked once. Then they disappeared. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but there was enough to make out the person's height, build, and clothing. I sent it to Langston, who forwarded it to the county investigator now assigned to the case. By Wednesday, I had another visitor, this time not from law enforcement. A tall man with a clipboard and a tight-lipped expression stepped out of a white sedan marked Pine Valley HOA Compliance Division. The seal was new. I'd never seen it before. "I'm looking for Gregory Barnes," he said without introducing himself. "That's me. I'm here to conduct a visual assessment of your property perimeter, HOA protocol, under whose authority, the Interim Compliance Committee, we're reorganizing following recent disruptions." "Do you have a warrant?" he blinked. "No, sir." "This is a voluntary inspection." "Then I suggest you voluntarily take that clipboard and step off my land." He hesitated, eyes darting behind me toward the cabin. "We've had reports of structural modifications without approval. I've had a court ruling." "I suggest you read it." I stepped forward just once and he took the hint. He turned without another word and drove off, tires skimming gravel in a rush. Back inside, I called Janelle. "I've been getting strange calls," she said. "Blocked numbers. Someone asking if I'd be willing to testify that you've been making unauthorized changes to your cabin." "Did you say anything?" I told them to shove it, but I'm not the only one they've tried. My neighbor Carl said someone came to his place asking about when you come and go. They're trying to build a case. No, she said. They're trying to make one up. That night, I typed up a full report including the attempted inspection, the anonymous calls, and the trail cam footage. I sent it to the county investigator and copied Langston. I also reached out to a civil rights attorney in the city, a woman named Elise Cho who specialized in property intimidation cases. She agreed to meet over lunch on Friday. We sat at a small cafe on the edge of town, her tablet open and stylus tapping as I recounted the last few weeks. "They're testing boundaries," she said, scrolling through the footage. "If you don't push back again, they'll keep escalating. What you're dealing with isn't just an overzealous HOA. This is targeted retaliation. I want it stopped, permanently," she nodded. "We'll start with a motion to enforce the restraining order through secondary contact. Anyone Wanda sends acts as her agent, that's a violation. Then we subpoena HOA communications to see who authorized that so-called compliance visit. And the anonymous calls. If they're tied to Wanda or anyone on her behalf, we can pursue a civil harassment suit." "Good, let's do it." The next week was a blur of paperwork. Elise moved fast. Her firm filed the enforcement motion by Tuesday, and by Thursday, the judge signed off. Wanda was now banned from initiating any contact with me, directly or indirectly. That meant no phone calls, no letters, no third-party messages, no compliance visits. Violations would result in contempt charges. Meanwhile, the subpoena turned up something better than I hoped: internal HOA emails. Elise had requested them through a court order, and apparently someone on the interim committee had folded under pressure. One email, dated the day after the hearing, was from Wanda to a group labeled Pine Valley Action Team. In it, she wrote, "We must protect the character of our community. Mr. Barnes has made it clear he intends to undermine our standards. I expect each of you to be vigilant, document his activities, report anything that appears non-compliant. Use discretion." Another message from a name I didn't recognize responded, "Understood, I'll take photos Thursday night." He usually leaves the porch light on. That was the night of the tree-line photo. Elise sat across from me in her office, reading the printouts with a calm that made her sound more dangerous than angry. "This is conspiracy to harass. We'll file a civil suit against Wanda and any named participants, and we're going to request that the county dissolve the Pine Valley HOA under grounds of systemic misconduct." I leaned back in the chair. "You can do that, with this much documented abuse of authority?" "Yes." "It'll take time, but we'll start by freezing their enforcement powers." That motion went through 2 weeks later. The court suspended all HOA fines, restrictions, and administrative actions pending the outcome of the investigation. Elise filed the harassment suit the same day, naming Wanda and 4 others from the email thread. By the end of the month, Wanda was served again, this time outside the grocery store. Someone caught it on camera. She tried to pretend she didn't see the process server, but he followed her to her car and read the notice aloud. She finally took it, face pale, hands shaking. The video surfaced on the community's private social page. Comments exploded. "I knew she was up to something," read one. "I got a fake fine last year for having a dog bed on the porch. Said it was clutter. They tried to evict my cousin over a lawn sign. The tide had turned. At the next informal community meeting organized by residents, not the HOA dozens showed up. They passed around printed copies of the emails, the court orders, and the photos. Janelle stood up and proposed a petition to formally dissolve the HOA. They got over 60 signatures in 2 days. I didn't speak much at that meeting. I didn't need to. Wanda never showed. The final court hearing for the harassment suit was scheduled for the end of the season. Elise estimated damages in the mid-5 figures. Enough to make a point. Enough to make it hurt. But for me, the real victory came when I walked out to the cabin one morning and saw something new. Kids riding bikes down the gravel road. neighbors chatting over coffee, someone planting flowers along the main trail, things that hadn't happened in years, when everyone lived under the weight of manufactured rules and surprise fines. The HOA sign at the front of the neighborhood disappeared one night shortly after that. No one replaced it. No one missed it. The county courthouse issued the final hearing date for the civil harassment suit, August 23rd. Elise called early that morning, her voice calm but clipped, like she was already 5 steps ahead. "They've filed a motion to dismiss," she said, claiming the emails were taken out of context and that Wanda had no knowledge of the surveillance activity. "You've already countered that." I sent the judge a supplemental brief this morning, along with a deposition request for one of the board members who responded to Wanda's email about my porch light. His name's Alan Mercer, former HOA treasurer. "Elise," I said, "he used to run the mailroom at my company. I fired him 6 years ago for falsifying overtime logs." She laughed once, short and sharp. "That explains his attitude. He's the weakest link. If we push, he'll crack." By now, nearly every homeowner in Pine Valley had distanced themselves from Wanda's circle. The HOA's once monthly newsletter had stopped entirely. The website still existed, but no one had updated it since the restraining order. The so-called action team had gone silent. The last time I drove through the neighborhood, I noticed that someone had painted over the HOA's mailbox post with a fresh coat of forest green. It wasn't regulation. No one cared. But things weren't over. Not yet. That Friday, Elise and I met with the county investigator assigned to the ongoing criminal aspect of Wanda's actions. Langston had passed the case up once the emails surfaced. Now, it was in the hands of Detective Rivas, a former federal officer with a reputation for being methodical and ruthless when it came to abuse of authority. "Your trail cams were the catalyst," Rivas said, tapping through the evidence on his tablet. "But the emails gave us what we needed to request digital forensics. We pulled metadata from several of the HOA's communications. It gets worse." He turned the screen toward us. A spreadsheet filled with names and addresses appeared. "These are residents Wanda flagged internally over the past 2 years. She had a file labeled non-compliant tendencies." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Basically, anyone who disagreed with her too often. They were tracked, notes on when they left town, when deliveries were made. In your case, she noted the make and model of your contractor's truck and how long he spent inside the cabin." Elise leaned forward. "This wasn't just harassment. This was organized monitoring of private citizens." "Exactly," Rivas said, "and it violates at least 3 state statutes. We're preparing charges for criminal invasion of privacy, unlawful surveillance, and conspiracy to commit harassment. If the DA approves the case, she'll be facing felony counts." She did. The indictment came down the following Thursday. Wanda was arrested at her daughter's house in the next county over. This time there was no polite detainment. Rivas and 2 uniformed deputies served the warrant mid-afternoon. A neighbor recorded the entire thing. Wanda tried to argue. Her daughter slammed the door before she could finish. The clip made its way to a regional news site by nightfall. Elise met me on the courthouse steps the following week. She handed me a copy of the full civil complaint, now merged with the state's criminal investigation as a coordinated case. "She's being held without bail," Elise said. The judge cited flight risk and witness tampering concerns. And Alan Mercer. He accepted immunity in exchange for cooperation. What did he give you? A full list of every fabricated violation Wanda issued over the past 3 years. Nearly 3 dozen residents were fined for things that never happened. Her own daughter's landscaping company was contracted for the correction work. It was a closed loop. She was funneling the money. Exactly. "We're freezing her assets and filing for restitution." I didn't say anything for a long moment. The sun was setting over the courthouse roof, casting long shadows across the white stone steps. For the first time in months, the tension in my shoulders started to ease. The hearing came and went. Wanda never testified. Her attorney entered a plea agreement on her behalf, guilty to 2 felony counts, including conspiracy and unlawful surveillance, plus a misdemeanor for misappropriation of HOA funds. She was sentenced to 2 years under house arrest, 5 years probation, and barred from participating in any homeowner association or civic governing body for life. Restitution was set at $78,000, payable to the residents affected. I received a check for just under $9,000. I donated half of it to the local fire department, the same one Wanda had once tried to fine for leaving tire tracks on a shared gravel road. The HOA, as a legal entity, was dissolved by court order 3 weeks later, but the story didn't end there. A town hall was held at the community center, this time organized by residents, not a board. People showed up with folding chairs, coolers, and potluck trays. Janelle brought lemon bars. Carl, the guy with the gnome, was elected to chair the new Pine Valley Neighborhood Council, a volunteer-based group with no enforcement authority and no dues. Their mission: community improvement, not control. I was asked to speak, but declined, suggesting instead they hear from some of the quieter folks who'd been affected. A retired schoolteacher stood and shared how Wanda had fined her for excessive wind chime resonance. A single dad described how he'd replaced his front step railing 3 times after Wanda called it visually disruptive. Each story drew laughter, then applause, but there was no bitterness left in it. Just relief. After the meeting, as I walked back to my truck, Janelle caught up beside me. "She was watching you," she said. "Who?" "That woman from the local paper. She wants to do a story on everything that happened, talk about how you pushed back. How it changed things." "I didn't do it alone." "No," she said, "but you were the first to tell her no, that matters." I looked toward the woods lining the road, the same ones that now held my upgraded solar-powered trail cams. They hadn't caught anyone in weeks. The cabin was quiet, peaceful. No more clipboards, no more fake violations, just pine trees and wind. "I think," I said, "it's time to take the sign off the gate." "You're keeping it locked." "No," I said, "I'm keeping it open." "But I don't need a sign to tell people who's welcome anymore." She smiled and walked back toward her place, the gravel crunching under her boots. That night, I sat on the porch of the cabin, listening to the sound of cicadas and the soft creak of the rocking chair. I thought about my grandfather. About how proud he'd be that the old place was being protected not from weather, not from time, but from people who thought power gave them the right to control others. The keys were mine again. The home was mine again. But more than that, the community had taken itself back. Wanda had underestimated a lot of people. She thought fear would keep them quiet. She thought a clipboard and a title could override decency. She was wrong, and Pine Valley would never forget that.